Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we, thine unworthy servants, here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudice, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be, to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Good morning, Senators. I beg to announce that since the last sitting of Parliament, His Excellency has been pleased to assent to the following bills: International Trust Repeal, International Partnership Repeal, Gaming Control Amendment. I have received correspondence from the Speaker of the House of Assembly advising that the following bills were passed in the House of Assembly and forwarded to the Senate for its concurrence: International Business Companies Amendment, International Partnership Amendment, International Trust Amendment, Income Tax Amendment, Finance Administration Amendment, Customs Control and Management Amendment, National Honors and Awards Amendment, Trade Export Promotion Agency Amendment, Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment. I have received correspondence from Senator Adrian Augier, who is unable to attend today's sitting. Let me take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy new year and all the best for 2019, and I look forward to a very productive year. For complete closure on the matter at our last sitting, I promised to review the Hansard report for the submissions by the Minister in the Ministry of Equity, Social Justice, Empowerment, Youth Development, Sports Culture, and Local Government, and by Senator Gideon to establish what was actually said. I now read the quotes from the record. I quote Minister in the Ministry of Equity, Social Justice, Empowerment, Youth Development, Sports Culture, and Local Government. We had to start from scratch. We keep saying so to you. The country was in a mess. And I now quote Senator Gideon. Madam President, I heard a few moments ago the former PS and President of the National Olympic Association really going down on sports, saying that sports was in a mess. The Minister was correct in her recollection of what she said. And as the question was put and answered at the last sitting, this matter is no longer open for review. Statements by ministers. Oh, you have a statement. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, this morning I'm pleased to present a preliminary update of the real sector economic performance of 2018. Based on available preliminary statistics, total visitor arrivals registered a new record high of 1,228,662 tourists in the period January to December 2018. This represented a notable increase of 10.2%, following the growth of 10.3% in 2017. This outturn was supported by continued favorable external economic conditions in most key source markets, improved airlift, and marketing efforts. This was led by a sharp increase in the number of cruise ship passengers by 13.6% to 760,306 in 2018, despite 13.6% to 7,660,306 in 2018, despite a 12.5% drop in cruise ship calls. This outturn was attributed to larger visiting ships since the opening of the newly expanded berth at Point Seraphim in January 2018, which now accommodates Quantum-class vessels. Stayover tourist arrivals continued to trend upward, rising by 2.2% in 2018 to 394,780 visitors, a record high for that period. This was buoyed by strong performances in most key source markets: US, UK, Caribbean, and France. US arrivals grew by 4.1%, partly due to improved airlift from increased seating capacity by American Airlines, Delta, and US Airways. Arrivals from the UK also rose by 4.9%, reflecting the effects of TUI, formerly Thomas Airways, which almost doubled its capacity. Arrivals from the Caribbean and France rose by 1.6% and 17.3% respectively, offsetting the 5.6% decline in the Canadian market. Consequently, the number of bed nights increased by 4.6% to 2,668,478. Madam President, I now move to agriculture. Preliminary data show that banana exports increased by 3.2% to 13,734 tons in 2018, following a contraction of 10% in 2017. Notwithstanding the adverse impact of Tropical Storm Kirk, this was attributed to favorable weather conditions and ongoing recovery efforts since the damages caused by Tropical Storm Matthew in late 2016, including support to farmers and control of the black Sigatoka disease. Exports to the UK expanded by 5.8% to 9,413 tons, while banana exports to the region fell by 7.4% to 4,078 tons, mainly due to lower exports to Trinidad. However, available data for non-banana crop production show that sales to hotels decreased by 1.5% in the first 9 months of 2018, while supermarket sales decreased by 2.3%. In the livestock subsector, chicken production grew by 4.1% in the first 9 months of 2018. Revenue earned by farmers rose by 6.5% to $20.6 million. Pork production remained unchanged in the period January to September 2018. Egg production rebounded by 42% to 1.32 million dozens in the first 9 months, the highest to date. This was due to a re-emergence of farmers and change in flock. Continuing on a downward trend, fish landings contracted by 7.5% in the first half of 2018. This outcome reflected significant declines in landings at the two largest sites, Vieux-Fort and Dennery. I now turn to construction, Madam President. There was a notable contraction in the construction sector in the first 9 months of 2018, reflecting the completion of major hotel developments and public sector projects in 2017. Provisional data indicate that imports of construction materials declined by 17.2% in the period January to September 2018 compared to corresponding period in 2017. Implementation of new hotel construction, the Uranura International Airport redevelopment, and road program have all been delayed and expected to commence in 2019. Notwithstanding, during 2018, private sector works were undertaken on the DSH racetrack in Vieux-Fort. Upgrade, renovation, and/or expansion works at the Le Sport Resort and Spa, Landings, Coconut Bay, and Windjammer Landings. Public sector construction featured spending by WASCO on various water projects, including the desilting of the John Compton Dam. Under manufacturing, Madam President, the value of manufactured output in the first 3 quarters of 2018 registered an increase of 7.3% compared to the same period in 2017. This was led by growth in alcoholic beverages, complemented by expansions in non-alcoholic beverages and food production. Increased sales of chemicals as well as metal roofing products, primarily to Dominica, also contributed to this outturn. Madam President, as far as inflation is concerned, higher international oil prices, which increased by 26.9% in 2018 compared to 2017, exerted inflationary pressures in 2018. Inflation, as measured by the 12-month moving average of the newly rebased Consumer Price Index, stood at 1.9% in 2018, compared to marginal inflation of 0% in 2017. Upward movements were recorded primarily in the sub-indices of housing, utilities, gas and fuels by 12.8%, and food and alcoholic beverages by 3.7%. And then, Madam President, in alcoholic beverages, tobacco and narcotics, 3.9%, and transport by 1.7%. And finally, Madam President, the unemployment rate as at September 2018 was reported at 20.9%, compared to an annual average rate of 20.2% in 2017 and 16.8% in the third quarter of 2017. Madam President, youth unemployment remained high at 38% in the third quarter of 2018 compared to an average of 38.5% in 2017. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries, responsible for culture and creative industries.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, next month our nation will celebrate its 40th birthday. And under your able leadership as chair of that Independence Committee, we will celebrate under the theme, All In, Our Journey, Our Future. I see nice smiles on the opposition faces there. So that's wonderful. All in, we are all in. Madam President, this theme really captures the essence and the spirit of the mindset of our people at this time. And it's very reassuring to see that on the faces of the opposition. And we thank the team that worked diligently to derive this theme for our celebrations. Madam President, this is a Christian nation, and our people understand the biblical connotation of the number 40. 40 years marks the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. And the reaffirmation of the Prime Minister by this Honorable House a couple of days ago tells the story of our nation's people's mindset as we approach our birthday. Our people are determined to use the past as a means to chart the way forward, and they are anxious and excited to move on and participate in nation building. And under the leadership of Alan Michael Chasney, the Honorable, that is, we will celebrate our maturity as a nation and commence the building of that new era, that new St. Lucia. I have circulated, and I have the copies here, for circulation. I will circulate some of the major events and programs, and I trust by now that some of you, or all of you, would have received your invitations to the major events for the period. The schedule of events, of course, will run for the entire year, and promotion is driven by a young team, a social media team comprising young people across the 17 constituencies of our country. It would be remiss of me if I did not highlight the fact that in this special year, we will witness the best of St. Lucia, particularly in the areas of arts in our country. Our creative people will have the opportunity to showcase the best our country can deliver. In particular, I want to invite everybody on the 21st of February to witness the St. Lucia story, or the story of St. Lucia, which will be hosted at the Saab playing field. We also have the Best of St. Lucia concert, which will be held in the Castries in the city. And we have the flag raising ceremony and fireworks display, which will take place on the waterfront. All of these are carded for the 21st of February. On the 22nd, we will witness the parade, the military parade in the morning, and of course the Best of St. Lucia parade, where we showcase again all that we have to offer on the 22nd in the afternoon. This year is a platform to showcase that creativity, that collaboration and unity, and that sense of pride and ownership of all things good, all things St. Lucian. We urge our citizens to come out and participate. It's our country. It's our time. Our constituency councils have been mobilized across St. Lucia to support and participate in all the events that are organized. They too will also undertake their own events in their respective communities. True progress for our country can only be achieved if we all participate and celebrate in the things that have and can make us great. I want us to seize the opportunity, this golden opportunity that we have, to rally all our people, both opposition and government. We want to rally all our people to participate in this event. On that note too, Madam Chair, I really want to thank the team that has been working hard behind the scenes. And of course, particularly, I want to thank P.S. Williams as he exits the system to continue to provide that support to enable us to achieve the goals that we want as a nation. We need good quality people out there, people who have left the system. We would want them to come back in and give our nation the support in various spheres of our activities. And so we want to say to him, well done for his 30+ years of service within the system, and continue to acknowledge the good work that he's done, and we will see that manifested in a lot of the programs that will unfold during that time of independence. But the key is to encourage everybody to participate. This is our nation. It's a new time, and the people of St. Lucia has dictated that in terms of their response, you understand, to that vote of no confidence. So we want to thank you, Madam Chair, for all the good work that you've been doing, and we hope that our nation will celebrate in the manner that we all can be proud of. Thank you.
Papers to be laid. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 1819 of 2018, Finance Administration Act Resolution of Parliament to borrow for capital or recurrent expenditures, services of consultants to conduct implementation workshops and to set up a performance management and delivery unit. Statutory Instrument Number 120 of 2018, Legal Profession Eligibility, Chivanez Charles Order. Statutory Instrument Number 121 of 2018, Price Control Amendment Number 17 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 122 of 2018, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, Number 17 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 123 of 2018, Legal Profession Eligibility, Jewel and Barrow Order. Statutory Instrument Number 124 of 2018, Customs Service Charge, Variation of Service Charge, Jewel Barrow Order. Statutory Instrument Number 125 of 2018, Tourism Incentives, Fat Bike Adventure Order. Statutory Instrument Number 126 of 2018, International Business Companies, Declaration of Head Office Company, BOSLIL Bank Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 127 of 2018, International Business Companies Declaration of Head Office Company, Coinfloor Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 128 of 2018, International Business Companies Declaration of Head Office Company, Excellent Holdings Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 129 of 2018, Finance Administration Act, Resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister for Finance to guarantee borrowing by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority to finance the Uranora International Airport Redevelopment Project. Statutory Instrument 130 of 2018, Finance Administration Act, Resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister for Finance to borrow from the Bank of St. Lucia Limited for capital expenditure to finance the National Sports Infrastructure Strategy and Action Plan and the 2018-2019 budget. Statutory Instrument number 131 of 2018, Finance Administration Act, resolution of Parliament to authorize the Minister for Finance to borrow from the Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China, Taiwan, for capital expenditure to finance the road improvement and maintenance program, the infrastructure repairs to schools, and the housing development program. Statutory Instrument number 132 of 2018, Price Control Amendment number 18, order. Statutory Instrument 133 of 2018, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, number 18, order. Statutory Instrument number 1 of 2019, Maritime Areas, Declaration of Continental Shelf and Exclusive Economic Zone, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, order. Statutory Instrument number 2 of 2019, Maritime Areas, Declaration of Continental Shelf and Exclusive Economic Zone, St. Lucia and Barbados, order. St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority 2015 Annual Report. And finally, Madam President, St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority 2016 Annual Report.
Bills. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled International Business Companies.
International Business Companies Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honorable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to move for the second reading of a bill shortly entitled International Business Companies Amendment. Madam President, you may recall that sometime last year, towards the end of last year, we came to the House to make a number of amendments to a number of bills. Or not bills, but pieces of legislation. And that had to do a lot with, in fact, not a lot, but entirely because of our responses to the EU and the OECD based on our blacklisting. In fact, our grey listing. And you may recall also, Madam President, that there was consensus on both sides of the House that these amendments were necessary because we were basically conforming to the requirements of these two international institutions, organizations, the EU and the OECD. And today is no different, Madam President. In fact, apart from this bill, this International Business Companies Amendment Act, amendments to that, there are two others that would follow the similar responses to the EU and the OECD. So this one, Madam President, of this bill for consideration is the International Business Companies Amendment Bill. And Madam President, the bill is to amend the International Business Companies Act. And it's a very straightforward, Madam President, amendment. And the amendment that we are undertaking here today is Section 3 of that Act. And we'll be amending Clause 2 to basically to prohibit international business companies that was incorporated before the 1st of December 2018 from acquiring any new asset or intellectual property directly or indirectly from a related party after the 31st day of August 2018. So again, Madam President, this is a straightforward amendment, and this amendment is just, again, a response to the request of the OECD and the EU as it relates to the blacklisting or the grey listing of St. Lucia. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the International Business Companies Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the International Business Companies Act, Cap 12.14.
Clause 2.
Amendment of Section 3.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honorable Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, I beg to report that the International Business Companies Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the International Business Companies Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the International Business Companies Amendment Act 2019.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled International Partnership Amendment Bill.
International Partnership Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honorable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I beg to move for the second reading of a bill shortly entitled International Partnership Amendment. Madam President, again, similar to the previous bill, this amendment is the same. We are amending Section 24, Clause 2, to prohibit an international partnership that was registered prior to the first day of December 2018 from acquiring any new assets of intellectual property directly or indirectly from a related party after the 31st day of August 2018.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the International Partnership Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the International Partnership Act, Cap 12.21.
Again, we'll take it clause by clause. Clause 2 stands for clause 2.
Amendment of Section 24.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honourable Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Senators, I beg to report that the International Partnership Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendment. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the International Partnership Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the International Partnership Amendment Act 2019.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled International Trust Amendment.
International Trust Amendment.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages and passed. No, to go through the remaining stages at this sitting. My apologies, Madam President.
Honourable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honourable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. And I beg to move the second reading of a bill shortly entitled International Trust Amendment. Madam President, similar to the previous two bills' amendment, Section 10 of this will be amendment to reflect the same changes that occurred in the previous two bills. Again, to reiterate, this bill will be amended to reflect that to prevent an international trust registered from the first day of December 2018 from acquiring international property directly or indirectly from a related party after the 31st day of August 2018.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the International Trust Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the International Trust Act, Cap 12.19.
Clause 2.
Amendment of Section 10.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the committee rise and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, I beg to report that the International Trust Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the International Trust Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the International Trust Amendment Act 2019.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment.
Income Tax Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order number 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honorable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. And I beg to move the second reading of a bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment. Now, Madam President, this bill will follow, or the changes or the amendment in this, the Income Tax Amendment Act, will follow similar changes or amendments in two other acts. And the reason for the changes, Madam President, I'll explain, is because you would have business owners and the general public. They may owe government monies. They may owe one department. They may owe monies to customs. They may owe monies, Madam President, to the Inland Revenue. But sometimes, Madam President, you find that these same government departments owe these individuals. And it's very unfortunate, Madam President, that you have, the current situation is that if government owes you, most times, especially your income tax, you'll have to wait many years, a few years, before you actually get your money. if they owe you. But when they owe you, you have to pay right away. Or if you owe them, they have to pay right away, Madam President. So we believe that, Madam President, it's very unfair to business owners and individuals. If the government owes them, and they owe the government, that they can come to some agreement, quick agreement, in more or less reconciling the two accounts to make both sides happy. So we're making the amendments to the first one, Madam President, given the fact that the Inland Revenue, who is the overseer of the income tax law or act, to ensure that this policy takes effect. So that being said, Madam President, we're going to be making amendment to the Income Tax Act. And the amendment will take place in Clause 2 of the bill. Madam President, in Section 127 of the Income Tax Act, caption 15.02, will be amended by inserting immediately after subsection 3 the following new subsections. Two other subsections to this. Currently, Madam President, there are 3 subsections, so we're adding 2 others. It will be 4 and 5. Number 4 will read, Madam President, the comptroller may direct the My apologies, Madam President. There was amendment to this in the lower house. The comptroller may advise the PS in the ministry or the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance to set off the amount of debt, tax debt or part of tax debt against sums due by the government to a tax debtor if the government holds, controls, has custody or has monies belonging to the tax debtor and is due to make a payment to the tax debtor. And the fifth and the last one, Madam President, is the comptroller may direct the comptroller of the Customs and Excise Department to set off monies due to a person against a tax outstanding by that person. So I believe, Madam President, to me, on this side, we believe that this is a progressive amendment to the Income Tax Amendment Act. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the Income Tax Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Income Tax Act, Cap 15.02.
Clause 2.
Amendment of Section 27.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Aye. Honorable Senators, the question is that the committee rise and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, I beg to report that the Income Tax Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendment. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Income Tax Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, bearing with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Income Tax Amendment Act 2019.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Finance Administration Amendment.
Finance Administration Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow for the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the second reading of a bill shortly entitled Finance Administration Amendment. Madam President, as I indicated earlier, this amendment is to address the policy change of the government as far as the set-offs are concerned between or within revenue, what we refer to as revenue agencies within the government. And this time, Madam President, in fact, you cannot make changes to one without doing changes to others. And the Finance Amendment Act is one of the major, or is the major finance, I would say, act or legislation in government. So if you are talking about changes in the way we collect and remit monies in government, the Finance Act is one we have to make changes to. So therefore, Madam President, we are looking at making the amendments in Part 9 of the bill, or the Act. We'll be amending Clause 3 of the bill, and we will also be making amendments to Section 43.2 of the Act, and we are looking at more so Clause 4 of the bill. So, Madam President, the amendment of Section 43 is amended as A in the heading by inserting immediately before the word abandonment the word set off, and B, Madam President, by deleting subsection 2 and substituting the following. The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, with the approval of the Minister, A, set off the whole or part of the amount due by a tax debtor to the Crown against a sum to the tax debtor by the Crown if the government holds, controls, has custody of, or has monies belonging to a tax debtor and is due to make a payment to the tax debtor. And the last amendment, Madam President, is that it will read, write off losses of public monies, stores, or other movable property belonging to the government or provided by or for the public service, or to abandon or remit a claim by or on behalf of the government or a public service where the amount exceeds $5,000.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the Finance Administration Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Finance Administration Act Cap 15.01.
Madam Clerk. Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 3.
Amendment of heading for Part 9.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 43.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honorable Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, I beg to report that the Finance Administration Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Finance Administration Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, bearing with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Finance Administration Amendment Act 2019.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Customs Control and Management Amendment.
Customs Control and Management Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honorable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. And I beg to move for the second reading of a bill shortly entitled Customs Control and Management Amendment Act. Madam President, this is the final amendment to the new policy of the government as far as the reconciliations of accounts are concerned within the government. And the customs, you would appreciate, is the agency that collects the largest amount of revenue for the government. I think it's in the region of almost 50, maybe 55% of government revenues are collected by the Customs Department. And I would believe, Madam President, this will go very well for, this new policy would go very well for the importers and exporters of goods to the country. The various sections that we have amended for the finance and for the income tax, it's almost similar to this amendment that we are about to undertake, but it's the only difference, Madam President, is now you're dealing with the Comptroller of Customs and, of course, the Comptroller of Inland Revenue. So therefore, Madam President, we'll be amending Section 71 of the Principal Act. We'll be inserting immediately after subsection 2 the following new subsections. It reads, Madam President, the Comptroller may advise the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, to set off the amount of a tax debt or part of a tax debt against sums due by the government to a tax debtor if the government holds, controls, has custody of, or has monies belonging to the tax debtor and is due to make payment to the tax debtor. And finally, Madam President, the subsection reads, or it reads, the Comptroller may direct the Comptroller of Inland Revenue Department to set off monies due to an exporter or importer against duty outstanding by that exporter or importer.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the Customs Control Management Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Customs Control and Management Act, Cap 15.05.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 71.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Madam President, what time? No, the Section 3, subsection 4, when I read, Madam President, in fact, subsection 3, I mentioned that the Comptroller may advise the PS of the Ministry of Finance, but when I came down to subsection 4, I read that the Comptroller may direct. So for consistency, Madam President, we should also have the Comptroller may advise and not direct. So, Madam President, the adjustment here is that we need to change the word advise to advise. You have ADIVSE instead of ADVICE. So, on both subsections to read ADVISE.
Yes.
That's totally different. So, see, Madam President, we have school teachers here, so they are able to teach us well and instruct us well here, I guess. And of course, we have the learned Attorney General.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Sorry, Clause 3. Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 71.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Clause
Amendment of Section 76.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 5.
Substitution of Section 77.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honourable Senators, the question is that the committee rise and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Senators, I beg to report that the Customs Control Management Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendment. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Customs Control and Management Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, bearing with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Customs Control and Management Amendment Act 2019.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled National Honors and Awards Amendment Act.
National Honors and Awards Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honorable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for the second reading of a bill shortly entitled National Honors and Awards Amendment Act. Madam President, this is a very straightforward amendment. As a government, we believe that restricting the number of individuals who can receive national awards, honors and awards, to only 3 persons, or no more than 3 persons in any 2 consecutive years, may not be sufficient, Madam President, because we know, Madam President, there are so many individuals in our communities in the country that are deserving of such honor and award. And, you know, and to restrict it to just that amount for 2 consecutive years, just 3, we believe it might not be in the best interest of those who are deserving of such. Madam President, you would know and hear, and even a song that speaks of what do you call it? Dead heroes, Madam President. And you would hear that we should have honored that person. We should have given that person an award, and that is too late. And we believe that we would reduce on these unsung heroes and the dead, what do you call them again? The Dead Hero Society, Madam President, by increasing the frequency at which the St. Lucia Cross may be awarded. And the amount that we are referring to, or the increase that we are referring to, Madam President, the amendment will read that no more than 3 persons in any 1 year. So instead of waiting every 2 years, we would increase the frequency to 1 year. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the National Honors and Awards Amendment Bill be read a second time. Senator Ferdinand.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple words on that specific bill. I concur with the Leader of Government Business that we do have, in any given period, we may actually as a country have more than enough persons who may be deserving of recognition and national accolades. It is a sign of a developing, thriving nation when many people are knocking on the door to be eligible for those types of awards and recognition. And so I think there is merit in consideration being given to increasing both perhaps the number and the frequency with which awards are bestowed upon our deserving St. Lucians. And note that I say deserving. However, I just want to advise that we err on the side of caution, and in no way should we, in ensuring that we make it a more frequent event, that we never seek to compromise the quality or the meaning of these types of accolades, and that anybody who is going to make that list of 3, that the criteria that is used is in no way compromised, and that every time these awards are bestowed upon St. Lucians, that we will all be very proud, and St. Lucians will be in support, generally, of both the individual selected and the manner or the reason that they were selected for. Many times, even when I was part of youth and sports organizations and other organizations, we even get invited, the invitations for St. Lucians to participate in nominating persons for different awards. But at that level, we have to be very certain that the standards are not lowered and the bar is always kept at a level that every St. Lucian would be envious and would seek to aspire to be recognized. And so I have no difficulty with the frequency with which the awards are given, or even in the future considering the number. However, in so doing, we must ensure that at all times the standards are not lowered, the expectations that have to be fulfilled are not changed, and that there is no compromise in the kind of attribution or the type of meaning that is attached to that type of recognition. That would be my gentle bit of advice and submission on that matter. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Thomas Francis.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, as chair of the National Awards Committee, I am obliged, duty-bound, to support this amendment. Madam Chair, since the introduction of the National Awards Act several years ago, many St. Lucians have been honored deservedly for their meritorious service, the selfless service to the country that have actually contributed to improve social and economic development of our beloved land. Many persons who have contributed and undertaken acts of bravery towards their countrymen have been so honored, Madam President. Madam President, this year is no different. We invited nominations as a committee. We embarked on our usual roadshow to sensitize as to how to nominate, who to nominate, such that the integrity of the whole process could be maintained. And I am heartened to say, Madam President, that this year we got a significant number of top quality nominations to be reviewed. I say top quality, therefore people listened. They understood what was required. And I can tell you the committee has had a very hard task in actually determining who to select, because we have so many St. Lucians who have actually done some tremendous work in this country. I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate all the nominees and to tell them at the end of the day, even if they have not been selected, they are all winners, but just by virtue of the fact that they have served in a selfless manner and tried to elevate St. Lucia and inspire our country folk. So thank you very much for all persons who took time out to nominate, and I again congratulate the nominees. As per the schedule here, the investiture ceremony will be held on the 10th of March in the usual fashion at Government House, so we expect to see all of you at that ceremony on the 10th of March. This year being a milestone year, 40 years of our independence, we believe that there are other areas or other categories of awards that we can introduce to honor more persons. So we are looking at a publication that would honor 40 St. Lucians who have actually contributed to nation building over the last 40 years since independence, and to highlight their works, such that we can have that publication for generations to come, to inspire our young people, inspire our future generations. And also we can have that as a book that reflects iconic St. Lucians or pioneers of independence, if you like, that we can give as a gift to somebody who is visiting the country, and we can even sell a copy such that we can raise funds for much needed projects on the island. Madam President, like I said, I support this change. This year we got so many quality nominees for the St. Lucia Cross. We wish we could give everyone, but we support that if we have to amend and give too many, we will dilute the whole process. The whole meaning will be lost. So I therefore support that we should increase to 3 as proposed by the Leader of Government Business. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the National Honours Awards Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the National Honours and Awards Act, Cap 17.08.
Clause 2.
Amendment of Schedule 1.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honourable Senators, the question is that the committee rise and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Senators, I beg to report that the National Honours and Awards Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendment. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present and I beg to move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the National Honours Awards Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the National Honours and Awards Amendment Act 2019.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Trade Export Promotion Agency Amendment Act.
Trade Export Promotion Agency Amendment.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honourable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honourable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I beg to present for the second reading of a bill shortly entitled Trade Export Promotion Agency Amendment. Madam President, the amendments to this bill is very, very straightforward but very important. There are two, basically, amendments to this bill. If we look at Clause 5 of the bill will be amending Section 5 to simply change the word financial to finance. Financial to finance. And we will be adding a new section. And that new section, Madam President, will be inserted in Clause 6 of the bill to provide for the change of name from the current TIPA, as we know it, Trade Export Promotion Agency, to simply Export St. Lucia. I believe, Madam President, we are following the similar change we had with the Invest St. Lucia. I remember it before that it was some long name. But I believe that if you're trying to market yourself out there, you should at least have your name in that, the name of the, you should have your country, the name of your country in that agency and exactly what it does. For Invest in Lucia, you talk about investment, and of course you talk about your country. So if you do a Google search, the first thing comes to your mind is invest, the country, St. Lucia, here you get it, here you have it. The same for this agency, Madam President. If someone were to type in on Google, Export St. Lucia currently, they will not get anything about TIPA. Because TIPA, no one really knows about TIPA per se, Madam President, if you're doing a wild search. But if you're interested in exports in St. Lucia, out of St. Lucia, Madam President, I think the logical words that will come to your mind is Export St. Lucia. So I think this is a very good amendment, Madam President. I think it's a progressive, a very positive one. And therefore, we will be amending generally, the Act is amended generally by Clause 7 of the bill to ensure that wherever reference is made of the Trade Export Promotion Agency, it is changed to Export St. Lucia. Thank you, Madam President.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the Trade Export Promotion Agency Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Trade Export Promotion Agency Act Cap 13.32.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 3.
Amendment of long title.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 2.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 5.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Clause 6.
Insertion of new Section 28.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill. Clause 7.
Amendment of Principal Act.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honourable Senators, the question is that the committee rise and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Senators, I beg to report that the Trade Export Promotion Agency Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendment. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Trade Export Promotion Agency Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Trade Export Promotion Agency Amendment Act 2019.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the first reading of a bill shortly entitled Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment.
Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honorable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for the second reading of a bill shortly entitled Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment. Madam President, you would appreciate and will appreciate the importance of the tourism sector to our national development and economic growth of the country. Job creation. Just the importance of tourism to our nation building. And we'll also appreciate, Madam President, that the industry, the tourism industry, is one that is very dynamic. One that is very competitive. And because of that, Madam President, because of its nature, we as a government must be vigilant, we must be creative, and we must respond to the changes that occurs very often, very frequently in the industry. Madam President, there is no doubt that St. Lucia has a very good product, a very good tourism product. And that's the reason why we have been able to achieve and been able to be given many awards internationally and regionally. Just last night, Madam President, or yesterday or Monday, that we won the Caribbean honeymoon, or the #1 tourism destination. We have a product. We have a very good product. There is no doubt. For the 10th time. And of course, we also won of the world #1 honeymoon destination. There is something good about St. Lucia. There is something very sweet about St. Lucia, Madam President. I have been many places. And I can say that we have a beautiful country. And we have beautiful people too. Not just in good looks, Madam President, but we have good people, good-natured people, I should say. So apart from the beautiful island we have beautiful people. The product is a very good one, Madam President. So we have to remain as competitive as possible. And what role does the government play in all of this? It's important that the government put legislation in place to remain as competitive as possible. And what am I referring to here, Madam President? There are two schools of thought, Madam President, as far as investment is concerned. There is one that believes that you should collect money from the investors before they come here, or while they are developing their hotels or their properties or whatever it is. Tax them. We're giving nothing free, nothing for free. I mean, nothing free. Why should, I'm referring here, Madam President, to the school of thought, why should these foreigners come here, build hotels, and pay no taxes to the government? That's what that school of thought believes. They should. Investors should pay up front. But, Madam President, there is the other school of thought that says that you incentivize investors with reasonable tax regimes or offerings. Incentivize them. Because, Madam President, when a hotel is built, when a room is occupied, referring to a hotel room, Madam President, or a guest house room, Madam President, that's when I believe, in fact, the school of thought says the government should be collecting the revenues. After the fact, in other words, you bring them in, attract them to the shores. Or I'm hearing the word lure. The ladies prefer lure, but I prefer attracting, like attraction. Bring them in, Madam President. And after you bring them in, that's where you can benefit from them in tremendous ways. Because, Madam President, when you study the impact of tourism on the economy, it is tremendous. And sometimes we believe it's just the people who actually go to work at the hotels are the beneficiaries. But this government believes in the second school of thought. Make it competitive. Bring them in. Provide incentives, Madam President. And when they come in, then you can benefit tremendously. Because, Madam President, the farmer will not benefit unless the hotel is built and the rooms are occupied. The dishwashers, the cooks, the chefs, the tour operators, the lawyers, and name it, Madam President, the taxi drivers, they will not and cannot benefit from the tourism dollar unless the rooms are occupied. And therefore, Madam President, with that being said, and with that in mind, Madam President, we have brought to this House an amendment to the tourism stimulus investments. As I said to you earlier, Madam President, this is a very dynamic industry, a very dynamic sector. We have to be vigilant. We have to be observant with what's happening. If we do not remain that way, Madam President, we will become uncompetitive to the point where we will not attract people or tourists to our shores, Madam President. And I believe we have a very competitive market, competitive product, Madam President, because I remember clearly when we decided to make amendment to to increase the departure tax. There were arguments that we would have less tourists coming to our shores. But I remember clearly, Madam President, I said that will not happen because our product here, our product in St. Lucia, it is not what we refer to in economics as being price sensitive. In other words, if the cost of coming here changes, it will not create any adverse effect in our tourist arrivals. In fact, Madam President, the very same year when we increased the taxes, we saw increased numbers. I'm not saying because of the increase in the tax that we had more people coming here. I'm trying to explain, Madam President, there is very little effect with a price change, Madam President, to tourist arrivals to St. Lucia. All because we have a unique product. And if we have such a product, Madam President, we have to try our best to maintain it. And the government has to play its role, Madam President, to ensure that the individuals, the business people who invest their monies in St. Lucia, I'm referring to the tourism market sector, that they remain competitive. So we are playing our role here, Madam President, with this amendment of the Tourism Stimulus Investment Act. And we will be, Madam President, Section 7 of the Act is amended in Clause 3 to allow the remittances of value-added tax payable by an owner or operator of a tourism project. I'm going to read it again, Madam President. Section 7 of the Act is amended in Clause 3 of the bill to allow the remittances of value-added tax payable by an owner or operator of a tourism product. And finally, Madam President, in Clause 4 of the bill, a new Section 12A is added to the Act, Madam President, to permit Cabinet to grant other tax reliefs and exemptions to an owner or operator of a tourism product that is declared to be an approved development. Again, Madam President, we want for that kind of legislation. So as soon as we see fit to provide such reliefs and exemptions to these approved developments, we will be able to execute such, Madam President, with ease. So, Madam President, with great thought, understanding the importance of the tourism sector in this country, we, on this government side, is presenting to the Senate these amendments. Thank you.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment Bill be read a second time. Honourable Leader of Opposition Business.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. This is really the last, I suspect the last bill before this Parliament today. I notice there's nothing else after this. Madam President, I noticed that nobody else on the other side spoke this morning. And I hope they're not waiting for me to speak for rebuttal. And so I hope they remain in the same outfit as they have started this morning so that we can still leave here on time. But let me wish everyone Happy New Year, Madam President. And I say this with much trepidation, recognizing that we've started this year, but I always, as I come to this house, reflect on the many lives we've lost, especially in the violence that continue to rip us apart in this island, notwithstanding the beauty, which I agree that we do behold as an island, but we are from time to time, Madam President, conflicted with crime and violence on this island that raises its ugliness, and it is something that requires a special time for discussion in the Parliament. I think we should never give up on our young people. We should never give up on our citizens, notwithstanding all the good things that has been said this morning, Madam President. I do acknowledge, permit me to acknowledge the fact that our anniversary of independence is approaching, 40 years, and when I was told that the theme is all in, and the member responsible did highlight that the 40 years is so important, I couldn't help but recall that sometime in the life of this administration that this parliament was stopped for 40 days. And 40 has become, you know, 40 has become a very, you know, memorable time with this administration. All in. Yes, we are all in. We are all in. We are all in. And when we say we are all in, Madam President, I think we are not just speaking of those of us who are here, but those to come, our children, the unborn St. Lucians. We must remember, as we reflect on 40 years of independence, that we are developing, or we contribute to the development of a country, because we cannot, no administration can do anything great. But our contribution towards building an island will create something, hopefully something great. And therefore, we do it for our children. And therefore, the theme all in, I hope, is really not about those of us who are alive and sitting here, but for those who are to come. And Madam President, I cannot help to mention that as I listened to the Prime Minister making an address last evening at the Cuban anniversary, 60th anniversary, he made a statement that I continue to reflect on, and I'm even worried. He said that there is a new world order approaching, and he indicated that he's afraid for the future, and he's not too sure whether he's not looking forward to the future. And I left there thinking, you know, that if the Prime Minister last night said that the future is a scary one and there's a new world order coming, I think that the Prime Minister probably is aware of some things that maybe we are not aware of. And I think we need to be steadfast, we need to hold on. But we are moving on, and we need to move on in good faith. And so my contribution to the tourism bill, Madam President, I couldn't help but I've said it in many gatherings, and I'm not one who promotes tourism as the savior of small island developing states, as it appeared at this point in time to contribute much vanity, a sort of a fake, I want to say, way of developing, and you look for the substance. But Madam President, as I observed the shutdown in the United States of the federal government, and I listened closely to how it's starting to affect the airline industry, I pay attention to what's happening in Venezuela, and Madam President, I couldn't help but to recognize our vulnerability. And I ask, how do you balance a development agenda that is people-focused, and at the same time save the nation today but look towards the future? I think we need to be very careful, and I believe in the statement made by the former Prime Minister, yes, when he spoke in the lower house. There may be a time for us to revisit the whole regime of incentives that we give to the tourism sector. There may be, and I'm not looking at it just from an island perspective, but maybe from a regional standpoint. Because, Madam President, you're not just looking at the building, but sometimes you look at the land where it is placed. You look at the nature of the investment of a tourism plant, the scale of the development, and then you compare it with what a household. And, Madam President, if you take 15 years in somebody's life who's working at a hotel and they're earning $1,500, $1,500 EC monthly, over 15 years they would have accumulated totally of $270,000. At about $270,000, Madam President, according to our the amount allocated in our tax code for somebody to earn annually, there's an $18,000 that is allowed in the tax. I think it's 18 or 19. I think it's 18. If you multiply that by 15, this is $270,000. Madam President, if you take a basic house, the smallest house plan that is being sold at the Ministry of Planning for low-income persons at 500 square foot, gives you basically a two-bedroom house with a toilet, at about $250 per square foot. This is about $170,000. Madam President, when I look at the life of somebody working at the hotel, in our hotel plans, and I look at what we're giving in, and the effect on our environment, the effects on our social structure, the fabric of our society, and the vulnerability of the sector, I am saying that sometimes I ask myself, are we giving too much in return for too little? And this is something that we should, as an island, because the math does not make sense to me, Madam President. A $40 million investment. I have done some bills of quantities for some hotels, Madam President, in detail, bills of quantities to build up the price. And I look at, Madam President, even the manner in which they're building the hotels. Madam President, a lot of the labor and the technology employed is imported. They're not even building hotels in the traditional way that would demand all of our skills in our workplace. So a lot of the materials are imported, and the materials are made in such a way, prefabricated, that you have less and less input, and therefore the added value is a lot less. So I think it's important, if you analyze the sector well, if you look at the tourism business well, it is something that requires, at some point in time, we need to look at it again. We need to see it. And I'm not saying that we do not have to survive today. We do not have to save our souls today, because if we do not, save ourselves today, we do not know what tomorrow may be like. We need to save ourselves today for tomorrow. But let us not present it in such a way that we are saving our island. Let us be cautious and let us be open to visiting it when the times, or when we may think it's right. And Madam President, as I close my short contribution, because I really believe that most of what I wanted to say was said up in the lower house. In the lower house, I think a lot of what I wanted to say on this was said, and there's also, Madam President, a reluctance to take advice. Most times when something is said, it's usually appreciated when it is said directly from the independents. Hardly ever the government side would recognize a contribution again, and that is why I'm saying it, and those who are hearing and the people who are listening could echo the same sentiments to the parliamentary representative, because I suspect it would be a lot easier if it comes through that way. That has been the trend. Madam President, the issue of, and I'm just taking leave to just mention, hooray for the work that has been done with regards to the committee. I just want to mention this because it is independence, and we are going to give awards to persons, and that is good. I have been to the activity, Madam President, of all of some of the activities associated with awards, and I see persons receiving, I feel proud and happy for them. Sometimes I see people and I question, and the point made, we must always be vigilant and listen to what other people have to say, because I've heard persons sometimes what they have to say about people who have received them. I say we need to get it balanced. And for me, Madam President, I think I'll have to bear my own cross for life, because I do not think we will be able in our lifetime to do everything that is possible to take St. Lucia across to the safe harbor. In our lifetime, we will not be able to do it. And I do not think anybody will. But the contribution that we make is important. And I think we should seek to make contribution that is sincere. Let us challenge ourselves. Let us challenge ourselves. Let us be sincere and honest. Let us be truthful about it. And let us not quickly beat our chest in terms of the direction that we're taking. For we may have to visit it at some point in time. Madam President, I think it was the last hotel, not the last hotel, one of the hotels that I happened to participate in its development. I recall we spent a long time discussing the waste management system. And we could not have come up with a solution to dispose of the waste in a way that would protect the coast because of the nature of the soil tests. And all of the technology available was indicating that it was not proper. And there was even discussion as to whether we go across the road and run the waste pipes up and pump the waste away to allow it to come down and filter. And Madam President, that was not done because of the cost involved. And sometimes for the purpose of making the money. And when I listened to a presentation from the government side some years ago in a cabinet room on the state of our water, our beaches. Yes, it was in a cabinet room. I was wearing a different hat at that time. I was the executive director of the St. Lucia Social Development Fund, and I was waiting to make a case to the government cabinet. So I was asked, yes, it was the UWP. I was asked to wait, and I listened to a presentation being made by the then Prime Minister, who was the Minister of Tourism at the time, asking for more monies to invest. But a presentation was made based on the environment, Madam President. And I listened, waiting. And when the person was making the presentation and was listing our various beaches by name and the level of pollution, one of the members said in his normal term, "Hey, but tell me all the beaches not good, you know," that way. He concluded that none. And I said, boy, what a cost are we paying for such tourism development? Madam President, since then, I have not gone into the water and dipped my head below it. When I go to the beach, I stay up this way, following that presentation. We need to be truthful to people. We need to know the facts. And I thought that should have been communicated to the general public. We need to know. We need to know. We need to know.
Madam President, the member could be...
Are you standing up?
Point of elucidation, Madam President. I need to find out, Madam President.
On a point of?
Elucidation, Madam President. Madam President, as I said earlier, that the tourism product we have in St. Lucia, it's a very competitive one. And the member is apparently saying that our waters are bad. Our beaches are not suitable for bathing. Madam President, we have to be extremely careful with this, Madam President.
President, I never said our beaches are not suitable for bathing.
So he's
Your mic,
the motive behind all of this. I understand what you're saying. I understand what he's saying, but we have to be very, very careful the statements that we make in this house and how it is interpreted outside of the house. That's my point.
Senator Henry.
Yes, thank you. I am not saying this. I said I would not put my head below the... That's how I feel. But I'm saying that I've heard presentation that our environment is being degraded as a result of some of the investment and the way that we have planned those capacities on our coast. And when we talk about incentives, we need to balance it off. I'm saying this. And I'll leave it as this. But I'll end on this note, Madam President. You know, I do not plan to remain and be part of a system of development that keeps things away from people, that we do not tell them the truth, you know, and well, no. I will stand and fight this fight. I will fight it. I'll tell you.
Order. Senator Henry, move along, please.
Yes, Madam President. You see, Madam President, I think it was in Isaiah 59, you know, because among the Jews they had turned away and they had become so wicked in their own ways. He said, none calleth for justice, nor pleadeth for the truth. They trust in vanity, they speak lies, they conceive mischief, and they bring forth iniquity. And he said that's why in Proverbs it says, but a lying tongue is for but a moment, but the lips of truth shall be established forever. If I'm going to stand in this parliament, I'm going to speak the truth, and that's what I know. And I'm saying that if we're going to present a tourism incentive package to the people where we're going to give hotels, concessions galore, ache tout manger ou vle, ou pa payer des sous. Bati pli go, hotel la ou vle, bon la me à côté moun ka benyen. Ou sa métier, sa ou vle la, moun pa sa même vin la, hototo la han, ka promet, sa ka porteur chay la han pays set lisi, mais à même l'air, yon moun ki ka travail, bay hotel la, ka han presque.
Madam President, on a point of order, section 36A, I think that the member is misleading the House, the Senate, by indicating in the Creole language, which I will interpret in English, to say, meaning that our local folks cannot even proceed to occupy in the beach. Madam President, this is not so, and the member knows that he is misleading the Senate. There are provisions made in approving various hotels and major development projects on this island by the Development Control Authority, where public access is left, and it must be left for our people, our local persons to access every single beach on the island. And I think that he should withdraw the statement. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Henry.
Madam President, sometimes I'm wondering what level of understanding and the psyche of people here. Madam President, I'm a property professional, and sometimes how you build can be intimidating to people that they choose not to come.
Senator Henry. The point made is that there is access to beaches. which is a little different from what you said.
Yeah.
So please withdraw that statement.
Yes, Madam President, withdrawn. But I'm going to say to go. De lè nou bati, go hotel bola me a café moun presque senti considéré yo pas supposé vini. Avec considérer toute place yo ye considérer ça c'est ça yo. This is what I'm saying. You know. And I'm saying there that as we balance off contributions to the tourism sector, let us think of the other sectors. Let us think of the other livelihoods. I am not ignorant of the planning process. I sat on DCA. So you haven't got to explain to me what an approved plan for hotel is. I am not new. Donc à parler considérer moi pas savent ça moi ka dire, moi savent ça moi ka dire parce que yo bagay moi connaître loi DCA, moi connaître business là, mais aussi bien moi sans cette siècle moi savent qui manière moi ka sortir moi ka aller bon la plage et que moi ka aller bon ce hôtel là. Moi pas ka dire ça per espoir, ka mal comprendre moi. Et avec autres même ka décider pour garder à de manière ça là. Ça moi ka dire si ou sans cette lycéen, moi pas dit nous pas ni pour bâtir hôtel et bailler ces hôtel là hototo facilité pour établir hôtel, mais moi dis on balancer, on garde qui quantité au ka bayo et qui ça au ka vieux hand à sur l'autre la mer. C'est ça moi ka dit parce que là nous bâtir hôtel, nous ka croiser bon la mer, mais oui nous ka croiser, nous ka détruire. Nous ne pouvons changer ça que chaque fois quantité là pour protéger ces mêmes hôtels là pas les faire parce qu'il a coûté yo trop là. So yo ka faire manière yo vlek de les moun pas connaître. Qui quantité temps depuis bon moins temps zot a fait yo test pour qui ça qui a fait bon la nous. Vous savez reporter à ça? Maybe you should do a report. You in government, go and do it. And finally, Madam President.
Madam President, I stand again on a point of order for the 6A. Madam President, the member is indicating that there are no controls.
1 minute, please. Please, Senator Henry. And your mic, please. Your mic.
Thank you.
Madam President, the Senator...
Stand on a point of order. Which one?
36A. Madam President, I think that the member needs to withdraw the statement that he is indicating that this island has no controls and no monitoring processes for the development of hotels in this country. He is saying, when last, that the hotels are doing as they please, that they are dumping, that they are developing and they're processing and operating, and we are actually not monitoring and doing any controls. I think this is a lie, and this is an attack on the various agencies in this country, and I think that the member needs to withdraw that statement. Thank you.
Senator Henry, you're bordering on becoming repetitive and frivolous. So please proceed. Let's move on.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. And finally, Madam President, we've started a new year. And like I said, we've been conflicted with some troubling things that are in our families. Some of the families who are conflicted in crime violence, the parents or family members are also persons working in the hotel industry. And I think that at some point in time, I'm sure the minister responsible for national security may wish to update the House on the further development and strategy.
Senator Henry,
yeah?
I see no nexus between what you're saying and hotels.
I'm closing on, Madam President.
So could we please?
Yeah. So, Madam President, I'm hoping at some point in time, this being my last statement, that you would come to us and tell us what new development there is in place so that we can help fight crime violence, especially as it relates, Madam President, to our visitors who are coming to this shore to visit us. We know that crime most times affects that very tourist product, Madam President. And that's why I think it's important that we link the two. We ask that we consider measures being taken. I know that we cannot prevent, and I've said to the police officers that have spoken to me, Madam President, we have visitors coming. We cannot prevent criminal minds because, of course, they are thinking criminally, but what measures that we could take to reduce on the incidence of some of the things that affect our visitors. Madam President, I would beg of him, Madam President, or the police to revisit our gun laws. And I would like to see that some of those our illegal firearms be crushed in public, you know, to give us a sense of confidence that illegal firearms are not returning back on the streets or something.
Madam President,
thank you very much, Madam President.
Okay. The bill before is the tourism incentive and investment.
Yes, I'm speaking of it. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the tourism stimulus... Oh, sorry. My apologies. Senator Thomas Francis.
Yeah, that's okay, Madam President. I'm a lone soul in this corner today, so, you know, I can understand why perhaps you would not have seen me. Thank you very much, Madam President. I would like to contribute to the debate on this proposed bill. In preparing for today's sitting, and more specifically in preparing to contribute to the debate on this specific bill, I had to do some research on the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act and also the Tourism Incentive Act, Madam President. From a historic perspective, the original Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act 12 of 2014, Madam President, allowed for approved developments to be exempt from VAT on building materials, equipment, etc., imported or purchased locally for an approved tourism project. However, Madam President, this act did not include the words, and I quote, notwithstanding the Value Added Tax Act, unquote. And Inland Revenue Department opined, from my understanding, that for an approved developer to be exempt from VAT on the specified inputs, the VAT Act had to be amended in Parliament, and it has not been amended since 2014, since, you know, based on my research. Sorry, in addition, Cabinet in the past has granted concessions, Madam President, to many developers that were not specifically provided for in legislation such as the TSIA, Tourism Incentive Act, and the Tourism Stimulus and Incentive Act. My understanding is that this has caused a problem, as many of these concessions granted over the last few years have not been gazetted, and it is the statutory instruments that are published in the Gazette that give the concessions legal authority. It's my understanding. This proposed bill, therefore, will permit Cabinet to grant other tax reliefs and exemptions to an owner or operator of a tourism project that is declared to be an approved development. This is what the explanatory notes say. Other tax reliefs and exemptions not currently provided by, in the two documents I mentioned, the TSIA and the TIA, include withholding tax, property tax, the remittance of VAT on other inputs or charges, and food and beverages, duties and excise taxes. This bill would now permit Cabinet to provide these concessions under the TSIA. That is my understanding. But, Madam President, I have some questions and some comments on the proposed bill, and it's unfortunate the Leader of Government Business is not there, because I'd like him to be able to provide some elucidation, some answers. Will Cabinet be prudent in granting the expanded concessions now possible with this bill and ensure that the enhanced concessions will only be provided where necessary to incentivize new investments and additional expenditure in tourism plant and services? Now that they will have the power to give more concessions, it should be carefully utilized and monitored. Proposed Section 12A allows Cabinet to grant tax relief and exemptions other than the relief and exemptions specified on the TSIA if Cabinet is satisfied that the approved development complies with the laws of St. Lucia, Madam President. Madam President, these are wide powers, and perhaps the bill could have stated where Cabinet is satisfied that the approved development will accelerate economic development and employment in St. Lucia during the development period. I think this needs to be added there, Madam President, and I am proposing such. Madam President, the new Section 7(1)(b) in the bill stressed that an approved development is eligible for a remittance in parts of the value-added tax payable if the tourism project has an investment value of not less than $50 million. Madam President, is this bar too high? I consider this bar a little high, as many local persons and companies looking to invest in the tourism industry may not be able to finance a $50 million project. So would they not be eligible for the VAT remittances described under Section 1B? I'm very happy, Madam President, that we have in our midst the Honorable Attorney General. So, so I would like to recognize his presence here, as I would expect that he would have had a hand in preparing this. Madam President, I continue. Should the bar be lowered to allow for similar exemptions to smaller investments and approved developments, or will it apply only to foreign investors? Because when we talk about a figure of $50 million, who are we attracting? Who are we incentivizing? What are we saying to local investors who want to invest in the tourism industry? What additional incentives or benefits will be available for our smaller local investors, Madam? The bill requires that any other reliefs and exemptions granted under the TSIA must be published in the Gazette. This is good for transparency, Madam President, but this is not new. This was the requirement under the TSIA and also the TIA. As the development period in these acts can be very long, concessions given by one administration that are binding on subsequent administrations. This is fair on developers who need the security of long-term concessions and also long-term tax agreements. But there should probably be some language in these acts that allows Cabinet to rescind or amend the concessions granted if the developer does not comply with the conditions or stated expectations of the concessions granted. I believe this is very important, Madam President. This is currently provided in Section 12 of the TSIA, and if we look at Section 12, just bear with me, please, Madam President. Under Section 12 of the Cfc Tsi, failure to comply with conditions specified by Cabinet. 12(1) says, where a person fails to comply with the conditions specified by Cabinet under Section 10, Cabinet may revoke or suspend in whole or in part the approval granted under Section 11. 2, all tax reliefs and exemptions specified in the first mentioned order shall be suspended or terminated as the case may be, with effect from the date specified in the order under Section 1. And 3, Madam President, the person shall be liable to pay to the government of St. Lucia the amount of any tax relief or exemption realized after the date of the publication of the order made under this section. Madam President, this is currently provided in Section 12, as I said, and I just read it. The public needs the assurance, Madam President, that there will be robust monitoring of the developments to ensure that there is full compliance with the conditions, and that monitoring will be carried out by the ministries independent of the ministry responsible for the approval of the developments. Good governments would suggest that this is the right approach to take, Madam President, and we do hope that the government will take heed. Also, the approved developments shall be required to submit annual reports showing the value of the concessions received during the year and the value of the investments generated by the developers, i.e. employment, local purchases, foreign exchange earnings, VAT and other taxes paid, and other intangibles, for the sake of transparency, Madam President, because I believe our people deserve to know that. In summary, Madam President, I believe that I would like to support that Cabinet needs more flexibility to promise or provide incentives that will generate economic activity and employment, and investors need to know that the legislation is properly in place for Cabinet to provide these concessions on a long-term basis. However, the quid pro quo is that developers and investors must live up to their promise and the expectations that Cabinet and the public have, that the incentive framework will not be abused. Madam President, if we leave it too loose, there can be abuse of the regime. So there must be belts and braces, if you like, such that we can hold investors accountable as well in terms of the incentives that we have provided, and of course, the expectations of our people. The legislation and granting of concessions has to be transparent so that the public is aware of who got what, and to be assured that those who get must justify and are accountable to what they have gotten, Madam President. Madam President, while we're talking about incentives, the leader of government and business, I was heartened when he spoke about St. Lucia's profile. Yes, St. Lucia is a very beautiful country. I interact very often with visitors, many visitors, those who are high end, those who are middle of the end, and those who are at the lower level, they come to St. Lucia. And they talk about the beauty of St. Lucia, they talk about the warmth of the people, they talk about the cuisine. However, we have, and I think I've mentioned that in the House before, Madam President, we have some repeat visitors. Some of them come every year, some of them come every 2 years, and I do interact with them as well. And they do comment on some, aspects of our country that we need to improve such that, we can make their stay more comfortable and more appealing. So, Madam President, I'm thinking incentives for beautification of properties in the towns and villages, beautification of the landscape. I think we can do a lot better in terms of beautification. Sufra in particular, I spend a lot of time down there because I have investments there. Visitors who come annually, they are complaining about the state of the town, the need for improving, the overall aesthetics of the town. And I think perhaps it may not take much, maybe a little incentive to the locals, just maybe a few tins of paint to help them keep the place clean, some, little competition. And speaking of competition, I noticed the Plus Belle Village competition has been reintroduced for our 40 years of independence. This is something we had historically, and that worked wonders in terms of how we were able to maintain the aesthetics appeal of our different villages. So that will work very well. So this is a good incentive, but we need to carry it forward in a sustainable way such that we can render St. Lucia a more beautiful place. Incentives for cleanliness, Madam President. Some of them complain that they come into the city and our city is not clean. I know that, efforts are being made to improve the appeal of our city, but in the meantime, perhaps some incentives can be given such that we can, ensure that the citizenry is more conscious of cleanliness and make sure that, they do not, throw garbage all over the place, and that they can contribute to beautify the beauty of our city and our towns and villages as well. Incentives for crime-free communities. Madam President, when I speak of crime-free communities, we all know that community tourism has become a big thing. I'm not sure to what extent that we are all paying attention. However, it is a very big thing. I interact with a lot of persons who come into St. Lucia via the Airbnb network, and they are living in little villages, they are living in yards, they're living in people's homes, they're in all quarters. When they come and they tell me they're in a house in Zeno, and they're somewhere in Bellevue, in Vieux-Fort, and they're in the heights of Labrie, some of these places I haven't even heard of, but that's where they are living. And if we have them in those communities, the communities have to be beautiful, the communities have to be safe. You know, so incentives such that we can perhaps get people to bring in those guns, those unlicensed firearms we have all over the place. The last thing we want is for a stray bullet in a community to hit a tourist who is out there trying to enjoy a little Airbnb experience in the community. So incentives around that, Madam President. Incentives that will simplify the bureaucratic impediments and hurdles in starting a business in St. Lucia. Now we're talking about village tourism. And I'm speaking to a lot of young persons. I'm trying to excite them and inspire them to invest in village tourism, Madam President. However, I understand, based on my own experience, the bureaucratic impediments of starting a business here. Maybe we need to incentivize for that to happen. I don't know what it will take, but it's taking too long to happen, Madam President. We need to make that happen. Especially the various licensing regimes that we have. They are tedious, they are complex, they are cumbersome, they are not customer friendly. We need to improve those, Madam President, and some form of incentives could make that happen. Madam President, I don't want to belabor that point. However, I want to end on that note. While we're talking about incentives, Madam President, I need for us to focus as a country on climate-smart development. We are talking about incentives for building materials, incentives for goods and services, and so on. What incentives are we giving to investors such that they can focus on climate-smart investments? I do know that this is the remit of the Ministry of Planning, such that they can approve, assess, and determine what development should happen in St. Lucia. But Madam President, again, this is a regime and a sector, if you like, that needs reform. Urgent and detailed reform, because the planning department has some kind of antiquated policies that need to change, and we need to update in keeping with the times that we operate in. We are talking about investment where we are still giving permission for hotels to be established on the beach. While we are talking about the threats of climate change, significant threats of climate change, rising sea levels, or riverbanks eroding, we have developments that are happening at the mouth of the riverbanks, Madam President. We have developments that are happening exactly on the same beaches that create a threat for us down the road. So I believe climate-smart investment should be incentivized, and I need to hear conversation about that, Madam President. Madam President, I thank you so very much for your indulgence, and I look forward to the responses from Leader of Government Business to my questions and comments. Thank you very much, Madam.
Senator Ferdinand.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to add my voice to the contributions regarding this bill. I want to begin by recognizing or acknowledging some of the points raised by the Leader of Government Business when he introduced the bill, and say, yes, I totally agree that tourism is an important part of our national development. It is, and it's a very important part of our national development agenda. I also agree that St. Lucia has received the coveted title of Best Honeymoon Destination, and I note that the honorable member did not mention for the 10th time until we prompted him. For some reason, my learned colleagues tend to prefer to mention the things that are unprecedented and are historical and for the first time. but this time around, he failed to remind us that it was for the 10th time, which suggests that there must have been some kind of foundation laid for what we're enjoying today, and it must have been something that we've been working very hard as a nation over the last few decades to maintain. And so I urge us, all of us, especially those of us responsible for ensuring that the sector thrives, to continue to do that. Madam President, regarding this bill, I believe that it is important as we provide incentives for our tourist and our tourist industry to thrive, for our investors and business owners, hotel owners, to do business here and to improve the tourism product, that we try to create a bit of equity. We try to maintain a level playing field. I believe that all our local enterprises, our local business people, our local hotel owners, guest house owners, all persons who attempt or intend to be part of the providing a service for our visitors, for our tourists, including the larger hotel owners, everybody should receive or should feel that they are receiving a fair share of the pie. And so the incentives should be provided in such a way that it's fair and equitable. Not equal, but equitable. Madam President, while we discuss the benefits of these incentives to our larger investors, which I agree, we must not forget our homegrown local business people. And as stated correctly by our previous presenter, sometimes we fail to remember that our small business, maybe those persons who don't have the ability to build large hotels with hundreds of rooms, they also provide a very important service for our visitors, perhaps in their own space, in their own environment. And that our visitors judge our country by the experience that they have. And not all of these visitors stay in all-inclusive resorts. They move around the country and they look forward to enjoying what is truly St. Lucia. So I ask that as we move forward with these incentives, that we do not forget the importance of ensuring that everybody who aspires to provide that type of service receives similar types of incentives. Madam President, I know that sometimes it's very difficult for us to get a balance between what we do for the larger business owners and what we do for the smaller business owners. But in this highly competitive environment, sometimes you don't start off at the same level with your competitors. And so we must ensure that the incentives can allow for fair access to whatever is available so that smaller business owners can remain competitive. Madam President, I want to mention that sometimes we also focus on providing these incentives with a view to allowing some of our more affluent and advantageous, if I put it this way, business owners to enjoy certain tax breaks and to be able to import stuff VAT-free and provide incentives, exemptions on goods that are imported. But I think I want to caution that we must always ensure that this is done in accordance with the legislation and with the, for example, the Tourism Incentives Act. I also call for a bit of transparency in the process, and I think that was properly ventilated by the previous speaker. We must also be mindful that we must take a holistic approach to the tourism development in our country. No number of incentives alone will really help us achieve the objectives that we have for our country regarding the tourism product. So in light of the holistic approach, we shouldn't just pay attention to the incentives, but we should also pay attention to the other factors that contribute to a successful nation, a successful tourism product. And I'll just mention a few examples. We need to pay attention, and some of them have been mentioned before. We need to pay attention to the crime situation. We need to pay attention to the education of the citizenry, because in some countries, you're not sure, well, in our country, you're not sure who a tourist will interact with, who they will meet along the way. And with all the tour guides and all those people we spend money on, it could very well be a student or an ordinary citizen who had, put forward an act of courtesy that left an impression on the mind of a visitor. And so it is a collective responsibility of the entire country to market our country. And so we must educate, we must sort to deliberately go on a drive to educate our citizenry through the formal education system and, of course, through other means to ensure that all of us know what our goal is for the country and how we should treat our visitors. Because sometimes all of the effort that is put in the Tourism Authority with the Ministry of Tourism, it's undone because of the actions of one irresponsible, or if we can say uneducated or insensitive St. Lucian. And so we must ensure that we take a holistic approach and we pay attention to the little things that our citizens need to know so that when they interact with these tourists, they are all ambassadors of the country. When I go to places like Barbados, Madam President, when you meet a Bajan, everything in Barbados is perfect and beautiful. They're so proud of talking about their country. And I'm not saying that St. Lucians don't do it, but we must, and it didn't happen just so, Madam President. The Bajans didn't just get up and be proud. They didn't just get up, and grow up that way. There are certain things that are being done in the education system, in the way they are socialized, that causes them to have that kind of output. And so we as St. Lucians, especially now that we're talking about our 40th anniversary of independence, we have to seek to do that. And we have to seek to even formalize some of our practices. Even in our curriculum, we can insert some of these areas. The social studies, for example. Sometimes you look and you don't see anything happening in the schools during this time. You don't see anything deliberate taking place to ensure that our young people have appreciation for how we treat visitors and for how we treat each other. So I'm saying the holistic approach needs to be taken. Madam President, I also believe we should pay attention to, I mentioned education and crime, but I also think we should pay attention to our health services, because we want to ensure that our visitors, if we put so much effort into incentives to bring them here, and I remembered my learned friend, the Honorable Leader of Government Business, spoke about bring them in, and when we bring them in, then they will be able to spend and so on. But when we bring them here, we must be careful that if something goes wrong, we have the services that are available. The healthcare is one concern. Our largest airport is Urundoro International Airport in the south of the country. And very close to it is this George Odlum Stadium. And that may be the first contact point for tourists who has just arrived to a health service. And that may be the impression that is left on the mind of that tourist when they return to their country. The quality of care that they receive, perhaps they developed an allergy or something and they had to quickly go by, stop by the stadium for treatment. So we must pay attention to these things. So healthcare is not a part or cannot be taken in isolation to the development of our tourism product. Madam President, I also think that we should pay attention to preservation of our historical sites and our patrimony. We need to pay attention to the things that make us St. Lucian, because sometimes we are busy trying to impress the tourists with all those things, and the things they come here for are the things that we are not paying attention to, are the things that we are destroying. So, Madam President, when I speak of the holistic approach, all of these things are important. Another one I want to raise, or I want to mention, Madam President, is, well, it comes under the environment, but we just have to pay attention to how we treat our environment generally. Our physical environment and the social environment, the way we interact. Sometimes when we speak of the environment, it's always about the beaches, the sea, and so on. But our social environment is a key factor that affects the way people see us, the way we relate to each other, the way we speak to people, the way we treat each other. So that's important. I also believe, Madam President, that our cultural practices need to be preserved. What distinguishes St. Lucia from other similar tourism destinations in the region is our way of life. And we spend money to bring people here, but we have to pay attention to what we do, what they see when they come here. We need to create a balance, Madam President, between the development of the tourism sector and the preservation of what we call our St. Lucia-ness. And what a better time for us to do that than as we approach our 40th anniversary of independence. Madam President, earlier on when we heard a statement regarding, I think it was from the minister responsible in the Ministry of Tourism responsible for for culture, is it? Correct. When she made the point, and I agree with it, that we should, the frequency of awards, I think it was, no, it was not her, it was the leader of government business. The frequency of awards needs to be increased, and I agreed. When I spoke about it, I agreed. But, Madam President, when we do that, we are demonstrating that our people, our citizenry, is made up of people who can do stuff, good people, competent people, ambitious people. St. Lucians, we are ambitious and good people. And so if we are that good and that ambitious, give us the very same incentives that you give to the other business people, to the international business people, to the foreign investors. They are local investors who have ambition, and they are proud St. Lucians, and they want to develop themselves and their country. So we must offer them these incentives too. And that is why I began by saying that it must be equitable. It must be for both our international and foreign investors and business people, as well as our small local business people. Madam President, I want to wrap up because I think a lot has been said on this issue. So I want to just remind the House that as we deal with this bill, that whatever we do, whatever incentives we provide, should not just be about making the books look good and saying that we were able to provide so much for these investors and these business people. It must be done by paying attention to the other factors that may threaten the very existence of the tourism product that we are trying to incentivize. Because, as I said earlier, no matter how many incentives you provide for hotels and for other business people to import goods and so on, very nice. But if you don't pay attention to the other issues that can threaten that very industry, it would be a lot of waste. So we would be well advised to spend some time and spend some money and perhaps provide some incentives for the things or the issues that can threaten that industry. And just to remind us what they are, from those that I pointed out, let us pay attention to crime and reduction of crime. In general, let us pay attention to increased education, deliberate increased education and policies that increase the education of our nation regarding how they treat themselves and visitors. Let us put more emphasis and provide incentives for an improved health service. Let us provide incentives for improved preservation of our natural resources and our natural, the nature reserves and the things that make us, or that we have to preserve to keep our country looking like a very unique and special destination. The things that other countries do not have that we have. We must deliberately put policies in place to protect those. And also, Madam President, we need to ensure that we preserve our culture and our heritage so that when we are providing incentives and we bring these tourists here and they come to our country and observe our way of life, they observe the way we interact with each other, the way we interact with them, they will return because they would have had a unique experience in this country because they would not have seen that anywhere else. And so I end by saying, yes, we should give incentives. Let us give it equitably to both local business people and foreign business people. And let us also pay attention to the other issues that affect or that may threaten the existence of the tourism product that we are trying to promote. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Tourism, Information, Broadcasting, Culture and Creative Industries, responsible for culture and creative industries.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I've been listening for the last few minutes to my colleague, independent senator, and of course, to the opposition senator just a while ago, and I was wondering if he was privy to the information that we have, before us. As it is now, sir, and I can report through you, Madam President, we have a delegation from the OAS who is coming in to assist us in doing exactly what you outlined, and working along with communities, trying to identify the assets, the cultural assets, the traditional things that they do have in the communities to be able to assist us in crystallizing our village tourism products across the country. But I want to go back to the point earlier made by the leader of the opposition in the Senate, not the leader of the opposition per se, but the leader of the opposition in the Senate, where he spoke to the address made by the Prime Minister 2 evenings ago, I think it was, at a Cuban function. And he indicated that the Prime Minister said that he feared the future. And God-fearing people fear the future. And that is symbolic. Because if you read Matthew 24, it will tell you what the end of times is like. And we should all fear that power of God. And I think our leader is beginning to understand that you can be a leader of the country, but there is always that superior, mighty power that you have to yield to be able to deliver to the people of your country. And so I'm heartened by what I heard from him this morning. Madam President, I want to say that we have a listening government. And as I listen to the opposition members, I listen to the senator here, I think our government, the government of the people, for the people, and by the people, is listening and crafting the necessary legislation. And that's why our Attorney General is here. He follows us, listening and crafting the legislation to ensure that our country continues to grow. The things we did 40 years ago, we can't do them now. We live in a global village. We have to now transform our products, create new ones to ensure that we can live in a society that is in keeping with the times, but of course preserving its heritage so that people can come in and enjoy what we have. So I'm happy to be on this team, and I always say that. I'm exceedingly excited to be on this team because we are responding in the right way to the issues beforehand. You talked about the beaches, you talked about desecrating our land, and I think as a responsible government, we have systems in place to ensure that we provide the monitoring that is required with respect to the services that are being delivered by the foreign agencies. Another important point for us, and I think my colleague was saying to me, we do the EIAs, the environmental impact assessments. We do them before we do our various products, our projects. And the La Paradis that has been sitting there for years is testimony, you understand, to the disregard, the blatant disregard that the previous government took with respect to understanding the value of the environment. We're not like that. So we are working with all parties to ensure that we get it right for our country. And Madam President, every week we sit in the Cabinet of Ministers, every week we sit there and we approve hundreds of incentives for our people in this society. Hundreds of incentives go through for our small businessmen and women who are trying to make a difference in this society. So we're not only taking care of the foreigners who come in with their projects, but we're taking care of our people as well. Our people who are ambitious come to this government of the people, for the people, and by the people, and we provide the necessary support for them. And so we want you to keep that at the back of your minds. It is a new era, and you have a team of people who are responding and ready and willing and able to take the challenges head on, and we are doing that through our legislative framework as well as the support of our people. And in terms of creating the environment you spoke about, not only enhancing the physical environment, but the social environment, the vibe, that we are in this society. We're making that transformation, and we are happy that we're on the right track. So those are just my few words. in response to this. We are on the right track, and we are happy that you are actually feeling the direction that we are going into by coming in here and making pronouncements on some of the work that we are doing. Thank you so much.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I do intend to stay long in my rebuttal. Let me first, Madam President, recognize the delegation. I believe it's from Guyana. Let me recognize the delegation. I think it's a 3-team delegation. 3? Yes, and just 2 is missing. I mean, and then, so just recognize their presence in the Senate this morning. So welcome to St. Lucia, and I hope that your stay here is an enjoyable one, and one that you will take back home and report to the people of Guyana on our behalf. Madam President, something happened in this house here this morning, and I believe that someone should be reprimanded for the breach of protocol. And I'm referring to the breach of cabinet protocol. For the leader of the opposition business to have come to the Senate here to tell to the world, Madam President, what was discussed in cabinet. Madam President, the leader of opposition business, Madam President, I don't know what is in place for such a breach, Madam President, but I believe he needs to be reprimanded. Because as far as I know, and we know, Madam President, cabinet is sacred. It's privileged, Madam President, and we should not walk out of cabinet to reveal anything that is discussed in cabinet. And for him to have been given the privilege to come to cabinet, Madam President, on a presentation, and I wish he was here, but I'm sure he'll get the message, Madam President. And not only not only the breach, Madam President, but what was said and the risks that such can pose to our tourism products in St. Lucia. Madam President, this is irresponsible. I'll stop here, Madam President. Now, I have heard time and time again that we refer to our investors as foreigners. Madam President, as far as this side is concerned, we see them as business friends, business partners. Because the word foreigner, Madam President, takes on a very negative connotation, especially, Madam President, when it's spoken about on the opposite side.
Madam President, no point of order. I just want to bring to the attention of my colleague that the specific terminology, foreigner, and I think I did make reference to foreign investors. If he's referring to that there's a difference between foreigner and foreign investor. So in the event that he's referring to what I may have said, I just want to make sure that this is not taken in the wrong context or that I'm not misquoted.
Madam President, it's unfortunate the leader of the opposition business is not in the House. I was making reference to the leader of the opposition business. But, Madam President, it is well known that the opposition, with the negative connotation associated with the government side, refers to the three F's: friends, family, and foreigners. The opposite side always speaks about we take care of only friends, family, and foreigners. So don't tell me, Madam President, that foreigners is not mentioned in a negative connotation here. But we on this side, we understand the importance of our business partners from overseas. But more than so, Madam President, more than that, Madam President, we also understand the importance of our local people, our local business partners. And there is legislation in place to ensure that they too are part of the incentives. And as my colleague, Senator, said earlier, that time and time again we are approving incentives on behalf of many local businesses that deal with either in the tourism sector or otherwise. And we come here, Madam President, with the SIs. So there's no secret about what we do in Cabinet. It comes out. So, Madam President, to make it look like this incentive, to make it look like, Madam President, this amendment is only for foreigners, Madam President, and for big businesses, it's misleading. It's misleading, Madam President. We understand the significance of small businesses and small business owners in this country. So I had to dispel this notion, Madam President, that we are only looking after big businesses and foreigners, as it is said by the opposite side. Madam President, we need to get out of that thinking that when we think of the tourism product, we refer to only as hotels. But there are many connecting parts, many sectors, Madam President, that lead to the hotels. There are many beneficiaries from the hotel product, or the tourism product rather, Madam President. So we need to stop bashing hotels and all kind of stuff like that, Madam President. I understand the importance of ensuring that we protect our shores, our environment. But as my colleague Senator Mangal said, that there are things in place to ensure that these things are protected. And not only that, Madam President, not only legislation, but it is the best interest of hotel owners to ensure that the environment is protected because they are protecting their products. So the opposition makes it look like it's just we just have people to build hotels and then we just don't care about anything else. That's not true, Madam President. That's misleading. And Madam President, I want to make it clear also, when we give incentives, we should never see it as giving away our tax dollars. It should never be seen that way, Madam President. Never. It should never be classified as foregone revenues, Madam President. Remember, the idea and the strategy and the policy is to attract people to our shores. You cannot give what you don't have. So when you give the incentives, and the incentives, let's say it comes up to $100 million, Madam President, this is not money we give out because we never earn that money. We incentivize to bring them in, or, Madam President, to allow for existing businesses to expand. So I don't understand why the opposite side speaks of not taking care of local people, the local business owners. Madam President, we believe on this side that the tourism is here to stay. It's here to stay. And we have, as a country, to do whatever we can within our powers to ensure that we encourage it, we improve on it, we expand on it, and it creates the avenue for greater economic development and economic growth in this country. We believe in the product, Madam President. We believe in the product. So now, Madam President, I pay my attention to Independent Senator Thomas, who said that Treasury should give the opinion or opine on the amendment. But, Madam President, we have a legal office by the name of the AG's Chambers.
Senator Thomas Francis.
Yeah, Madam President, on a point of clarification, I'd like to state that I did not say, I said an opinion had been given historically that required that, changes were made to the existing Tourism Incentive Act such that it would be synchronized with the VAT Act. I believe that is what I said. I'm not suggesting that, I'm not suggesting it for this particular motion, but I am saying that's an opinion that had been given historically. When the VAT Act was introduced, an opinion was given where there needed to have been some synchrony between the VAT Act and the Tourism Incentive Act. And it has not happened to this day. That is what I said. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President, I do take the...
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I do take the correction here. It was just the misinterpretation of what she said. Thanks for the correction, Madam Senator. But, Madam President, Madam President, please, I'm trying to. Madam President, if you turn to the bill under section, the amendment under section 7, value added tax, subsection 1, it says that notwithstanding, the key word here is notwithstanding the Value Added Tax Act. In other words, leave the value added tax as is, notwithstanding it's there. These are the changes that we are making. So there is no need, Madam President, if you have the word notwithstanding, there is no need to go ahead and make changes to the existing Value Added Tax Act. Absolutely none at all, because of the word notwithstanding.
Yeah.
Senator Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Just on a point of clarification, I explained the historic perspective a while ago, and I was saying, based on what is presented here, this amendment is actually obviating the need for the amendment or the synchrony between the existing act and, of course, the changes that are now being made, because it's now being proposed. And I accept what you just said, because I read it. I am saying, historically, it was proposed, it wasn't happen, but this act is going to fix it. Make it happen. That was my point.
So we are supporting each other here.
Honorable Leader of Government.
I don't think we are saying, yes. So we are saying the same thing almost, yes. Oh, there's nothing to be attacked. We're just supporting each other. So we are synchronizing, right, madam? We are synchronizing here. Synchronizing thoughts. It's just the opposite side is not synchronizing, always. No, I heard about, Madam President, that we should supposed to be transparent in all of these incentives and so on. Madam President, before these incentives are given, yes, the legislation is there, but the process requires that Cabinet approves. But before Cabinet approves, Madam President, there are technical folks who are involved, the technical officers, the public officers, who are involved in the whole preparation of the memos to Cabinet. And you'll have the technocrats in the various departments, and most times, Madam President, the Aegis chambers would be consulted on such matters. So it is not a situation where Cabinet just, the Cabinet members just come in on a Monday morning and say, let us give the incentives to this hotel, to this property owner, nothing like that, Madam President. It is a well-oiled process, one that will create the transparency and the accountability. So it's a well put together process, Madam President, and it's not Cabinet just on its own right that will decide as to who gets what and how much. So I wanted to make this, ensure that we clear this. So, Madam President, I don't think there is much I have to say based on the responses of the opposition side and also the independent senator. So, Madam President, I am looking forward to the Senate approving the amendment to the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment Act.
Honorable Senators, the question is that the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, Cap 15.03, and for related matters.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 7.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Clause 4.
Insertion of new Section 12A.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honorable Senators, the question is that the committee rise and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Senators, I beg to report that the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendment. Honourable Leader of Government.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that this Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye.
Aye.
As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Amendment Act 2019.
Senators, it was remiss of me not to acknowledge the presence of the Clerk of Guyana, of the Parliament of Guyana, and his, the rest of his group. But I think because they've been here with us a while, and so they're almost part of us, and we're used to them. They're not sitting here right now, but I do want to welcome them, and I'm glad you acknowledge them, Honourable Leader of Government Business. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned, sine die.
Honourable Senators, the question is that this Senate do stand adjourned, sine die. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
All rise.